I'm super excited to have Amir on today's episode of the Founders Cut. We had a chance to get connected not too long ago. It sounds like, and it was very clear to me that we have a lot of similarities. And so I jumped at the chance to ask him on. So, Amir, thanks for taking time out of your day on a Friday when we're recording this now to chat with me about what you're building. I like to start all of these with, before talking about the company, which we'll spend a good chunk of the time, like to focus on introducing the founder. So we'd love to just kind of hear who you are and how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, thanks, Adam, for having me on. Really appreciate you taking the time as well on this Friday before the holidays. So I've had like many founders, probably a little bit of a windy road. So I'm in my late 30s, so I kind of am in that last generation that straddled growing up without technology, really, at our fingertips, to really quickly in my youth, slowly integrating technology was kind of the nerd programming calculators to cheat on tests in high school before the teachers caught on. So I kind of fit into that pocket nicely. Went to school for computer science at the University of Minnesota, uh, realized that all my friends that were in business school were having way more fun than I was. So for all the wrong reasons, I went and transferred over to business school after my freshman year, uh, and then landed a career in investment banking, middle market mergers and acquisitions. Did that for over a decade. Had a lot of fun. Got to work shoulder to shoulder with a lot of really successful entrepreneurs and family-owned businesses. Uh, and then once the investment bank I was at was acquired by another large investment bank, I decided to kind of take a step back and take a hard look at what I wanted to do when I grew up, per se. Uh, that was 2016. Right around that time, I tried virtual reality for the first time. So fully immersive, 6 degree of freedom, fully interactive VR. And I can't put it any other way besides the fact that I became obsessed with the technology and the platform and couldn't see a path in which spatial computing like VR and AR wasn't the next generation or iteration of how humans interact with computers. Couldn't kick the obsession and ultimately put investment banking to the side and tried to find a way into this wild ecosystem of immersive technology and started REM5 in 2017.
So REM5 today is not what REM5 was in 2017. There's been an evolution, and I think it's a very similar story to a lot of founders where they start with a kind of more of a consulting firm, and then evolves to how do we scale this? This solution needs to get to the masses, right? And I'm assuming the next stage, the next frontier for you is how do you take what you've learned over the last 5 years building REM5 and get it into more users' hands, right?
Yeah, it's exactly right. I mean, me coming from somebody who had a business background and not a tech background, I had to find a very simple problem in the industry that I could solve without having to write code. And so step one for me was accessibility. So this tech was really, really powerful. But as I looked around our community, I looked at enterprise, looked at schools, nobody had access to this technology. Or if they did, it fell flat on execution. So I'm like, how do I solve that kind of last mile of distribution in immersive tech? And so we uh, took over an 8,000 square foot warehouse and basically turned that into a immersive tech lab, right? Think of what a computer lab was in the 90s before everyone had computers at homes and now in their pockets. So that was kind of step one. And as part of that, I wanted to create an ecosystem to listen to the users and see how the users are actually using this technology before we started building, right? Versus building something and just shoving it out into the market, which is what a lot of people were doing and burning a lot of cash and not finding a lot of product market fit. So it was kind of our way of how do we generate a little bit of cash, expose people to the technology, and then listen to the market for what their needs are. Uh, pandemic hits in early 2020, and putting headsets on people in person uh, becomes extremely challenging.
Right.
Pre-pandemic, we had put about 40,000 people through VR at our facility. And then overnight that went to zero, and our ability to do that went to zero. So we started looking at how can we continue to fulfill our mission? How can we um, take all the learnings we've gained over the couple of years prior to that, and build tools that can scale. And so that's where our metaverse platform Simulacra came from, right? As we looked around the market, the term spatial web or metaverse was starting to be used more and more. People were looking for new virtual solutions that weren't video chat and PowerPoints. And so as we looked around, we found there to be kind of two buckets of platforms that existed. One was uh, really built for kids. You have platforms like Roblox and
Hmm.
Minecraft that are getting 100 million users a day, but they're very laser focused on who their user is, which is the youth. And then you also had this Web3 wave coming, this NFT blockchain wave coming, and there were metaverse platforms being built for them. But again, they were hard to use. If you were a average 40, 50-year-old person, you were going to have a really hard time finding your way around any of those platforms. So back to kind of where we started in 2017 is how do we make this tech accessible? We started building metaverse experiences that were accessible and usable to quote unquote mainstream folks,
Hmm.
and started to find a lot of value there. And that's where our business has evolved and where we're spending most of our time today.
Yeah, I think it's really important for people that want to do more in the space of metaverse to understand there's a little bit of sherpaing that needs to happen. You need to hold the hands of the end user. You look at the spectrum of people and their tech capabilities. The companies that have succeeded uh, and have had sustainability and growth are the companies that have figured out a way to get mass adoption. And so, I'm a big proponent of blockchain. I'm a big proponent of Web3. At a certain parts of it make sense. Certain parts of it are just complete, utter hot trash garbage. But I like the foundational layer of what it could represent in the future. The biggest rate limiting step that I see currently in the space, and I've said this ad nauseum before, is the people that are building traditionally, now sweeping generalizations of wording, the people that are building just have no intent of like making it easy or putting usability at the forefront. It's just like it's cool tech. People should just want to use it. It's like when I learned how to get into crypto and blockchain, it was like a year long process before I felt actually comfortable. No one in their right mind has 12 months to learn how to use something. If you told people, "Hey, go buy an iPhone, but it's going to take you 12 months to figure out how to use it and not more like 12 minutes." Like it's completely unreasonable. So it's refreshing to hear that you're taking the user experience as the gateway instead of like the tech experience first, right? It's important, I think, and I think more and more companies will figure that out in the Web3 space. But right now, it's still not the industry standard, which is a shame because I think it would be further ahead right now if it was.
Oh,
That
it's
being
exactly.
said, what is like what is the pain point that you're solving with Simulacra?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, I mean, as you look around, I mean, to your point, I mean, if you ask enterprises right now, um, the study just came out for 2022. It showed the same results of the study that happened in 2021. If you ask business leaders if they're curious about the metaverse, they say yes. The vast majority of them say yes. And then if you ask them why they're not moving faster, they say two things. One is user experience, too complicated, too much friction for users.
Hmm.
And then second is there's not enough relevant content, right? Those are the two because you need a why, right? I mean, it's you read the headlines every day of these vast virtual worlds and there's 6 people in them.
Hmm.
It's like because what's the why? Why are you coming to these spaces? Well, we need more content. So with Simulacra, we're flat out just trying to tackle those first two buckets. So one is how do you prioritize user accessibility? How do you get, we pick on my mom. as our target user. And everything has to go past the Amir's mom test of being able to get into a space and interact socially. So that's a pretty unique bar, I'd say, for people that are building in our space. But that's what we do, and it's
Hmm.
turned out that we've actually taken away a lot of features over the last 2 years because they overcomplicated things. And as soon as the conversation turns to the technology and not the experience, we're not doing our job, right?
Hmm.
We want people talking about the experience and not even mentioning the technology. It should be so seamless that it's not even in the conversation. So
Hmm.
that's kind of the first bucket. The second bucket is on the content side. So we need to democratize content creation in this space. And we need to make tools that are purposeful. So the area that we're really focused on is storytelling and learning and development in these spaces. And so we're building tools that allow companies that have a lot of really compelling content to be able to no code, drag and drop, build their own learning and development experiences without having to be uh, a coding veteran, if you will. So we kind of like to use the cliche, like we're building Wix for the metaverse. If you think back to the 90s, it would take $100,000 to build a simple website and basic e-commerce, and it would still be hard for the users to use. Fast forward to today, you and I could spin up 5 websites by the end of this podcast that would be really easy for users, really effective for us as a business, and that just doesn't exist for the spatial web yet, and that's what we're building.
Yeah, Web3 is very, very nascent and small, like slice of a pie in terms of populations. It is paltry, and so I think from that perspective, anything you can do to, you know, get more numbers to utilize and try it out and test and learn is important. One of the biggest concerns I ever have when I talk to companies in your sector is just how fragmented everything is. Do you believe that your solution, and as you know, I'm leading the suspect a little bit, obviously, but do you believe that your solution has an opportunity to bring more people to one foundational platform? Because right now, if I go try to find something, I could probably find 4 or 5 different people doing the same thing, trying to build the same product. And it's like, where do you go? It's attention economy, and everyone's trying to take your attention, right? So, like, how do you guys think about things like that?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that we're not trying to be everything to everyone. We're trying to stay focused on our lane of storytelling and learning and development. And we're not worried about creating the mall per se, right? Like, I mean, stepping way back, right? I want to also bifurcate the terms of Web3 and metaverse, right? Those are related but different concepts, right? So
Well, let me push back a little bit though. Like, I think like we can bifurcate that. However, the world in general today uses them as just interchangeable terminology. And I know you shake your
100%,
head no.
but I think
Yeah.
it's wrong. I think it's wrong.
Whether it's wrong or not, that's what the users have deemed to be how they see the world. So, like, who are we to try to push back, or do we just play within the confines of what's been established and say we move it forward? Because, like, how much energy do you want to spend trying to change that narrative as opposed to just playing within it and saying, okay, you want to call metaverse Web3, so be it. Let's just move forward with it, and I'll play within those paradigms.
I don't agree though. I think that you're talking from a place of being in the know, right? I think that most people we talk to, don't really have an opinion on it. They maybe have some surface level headlines that they've read, but that's it. I mean, we still have the opportunity to educate and redefine what these terms mean with the general public, right? Like we just got done with a pilot with Target with 1,000 employees, right? We
Mm-hmm.
never used the term Web3 once in
Mm-hmm.
any of our discussions, and it never even came up. It wasn't relevant to the discussion,
Mm-hmm.
right? We were focused on delivering compelling learning and development experiences that were better than Zoom and PowerPoint.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't have anything to do with blockchain,
So let me
decentralization.
push a different way. Why do you even call it Web3 or metaverse in the first place then?
Oh, I agree. I say it all the time. We need to rebrand the whole damn thing. 100%. I'm here for it.
Okay.
all
Okay.
day long.
Well,
If you go back, you'll find this funny. If you go back to the first, we built a metaverse experience for the Minnesota Twins in 2021, early 2021. And
hmm
if you go back to the press release, we batted it around back and forth for a week on what to call it.
hmm
And we ultimately decided not to use the word metaverse,
I think that's smart.
and we use spatial web,
I
right?
mean, I don't know if I consider that any better, to be honest.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
you know,
Well, yeah, but
yeah,
that's what it was. It was a 3D
yeah,
website, right?
yeah,
And then once Facebook changed their name to Meta,
yeah,
that's where, to your point, we said kind of, all right, these forces are much bigger than us. We got to start using the
yeah,
word,
yeah,
and
yeah.
and
I
and
gotcha.
that's when we
Yeah,
started to do it,
I
right?
think
But but I agree. I think we need a full rebranding
y-
because it's so confusing to outsiders.
the reason why I push this like conversation right now the way it is because I know you're open to it, and I'm just like playing devil's advocate.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think far too often it's so like our whole industry, startups in general, crypto, technology, so freaking like arrogant with like the way we use words, and like it's like call it what it is. It's a virtual world. People understand what a virtual world is. Why do we need to rebrand and like confuse people and add another layer of complexity just with semantics of wording, right? And so that's why I like to try to push founders that I talk to, and not you in particular, just in general when I talk to Web3 people, like why is it Web3? Why is it not just the website? Well, appreciate you humoring me on that tangent. What is the what is the future for you all? Is it to go deeper into corporate? Are you looking to go into ed tech? You talked about learning and storytelling. Obviously, like K through 12 sounds like a really good fit there, with its own complexities, of course. Where do you think like your beachhead market is? Is it staying within the corporate world?
Yeah, I mean, we do a lot of work with K through 12 because I'm really passionate about making sure that this next generation has access to this technology, and that they're going to be the ones that define the future of this space. I'm also laser focused on making sure there's equitable access to this technology. So that's why I stay close to K through 12 from a philosophical standpoint, but I also recognize that the business there is much more challenging. So
hmm
where we pay our bills and where we grow is on the enterprise side.
Sure.
So that's where we're laser focused for our actual core business. So I mean, where we're moving towards is becoming basically a SaaS platform for enterprise that want to deliver stories or learning and development content. So we found that these worlds of large brands that are winning, like consumer facing brands,
hmm
at the end of the day, they're having to tell stories and creating experiences and becoming experiential, right? It's an overused word, but it's meaningful. And if you're not an experiential brand that has a story to tell, you're not going to be relevant 20 years from now, 10 years from now. So there's that piece. And then the second piece is learning and development, right? You talk to any HR director, any CEO, their biggest bottleneck right now is training people. They need to upskill. They can't find people that have the skills that they want, and they're looking for tools that can do it faster and more
hmm
effective. And in this world of being virtual, we're still left with the same tools we had 20 years ago, which is websites, PowerPoints, videos, and
hmm
some Zoom calls. And so where I'm going with it is that both those worlds of storytelling for brands and learning and development, they kind of require the same tool set. And those are the tools we're building.
Very cool. Very cool. Um, without throwing out logos or specific use cases, you got any cool stories that you've worked through in the last 6 to 12 months that you'd be willing to share? So what I'm trying to do is get the creative juices flowing for someone that might be listening from the corporate world that might want to think about, well, how would we implement this at our org?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, our two most notable would be, one is the Minnesota Twins, like I mentioned earlier. So we built for their 30th anniversary, we built a Hall of Fame experience. If you
hmm
think about somebody like the Twins, and if you think about Twins fans, they love history, they love stats, they love imagery, and so we were able to build out the entire Hall of Fame experience in the Simulacra platform, and fans from all over the country, all over the world were able to go up, meet in the space, and tour it together.
Hmm.
So you were able to really like democratize that experience and scale it in a way that wouldn't be possible without this technology. So if I'm in Minnesota and my dad's in Florida and we want to meet up and go through the Hall of Fame together, we could do that right from a web browser on our regular computer, no VR headset required. So back to that accessibility thing, super accessible. And one of the coolest moments of that project is we got to do the world's first press conference in professional
Mm.
sports in that space. So
Hmm.
we did a press conference, all local, national media, with Michael Kadire and Torrey Hunter in there live. So we're just hanging out from the comfort of my own home and Kadire at home and Hunter at home. And that was like a got chills moment for us. So that's more of a consumer brand experience.
Hmm.
Um, and then I'll go back to Target, which we just wrapped up a pilot with them this last month, where we built a social justice museum in the metaverse called One City, Two Realities that really tells the story of Minneapolis in particular and how we kind of hold ourselves out as being great place to live, great place to raise a family, great parks, all these positive accolades. But when you start to pull back the data in terms of uh, wealth gaps, incarceration rates, education gaps, we have some of the worst racial inequities in the country across the board. And so through data visualization, videos, 360 photos, audio clips, it really tells that story. And so we use that as an experience for folks for again for internal upskilling and learning and development purposes. I think most companies are saying a lot and investing a lot in developing cultural competence and emotional intelligence among their employees, but they're striving for new ways to do it and more disruptive
Sure.
ways to do it. And so we've filled that gap, and we just got a note from them saying that it was the most engaging diversity, equity, and inclusion event they've had all year at Target for that
Yeah.
group.
Yeah, I could totally see that being the case when everything else that's been done in the past is like click through this um click through this like slideshow and take a quiz at the end. You know, it's like that's what back in my corporate days, that's what we'd go through, like a learning platform, log in, and then they put us through like like maybe like videos, but for the most part just general slides with bullet points, and very boring, not engaging, don't really get much out of it. If there's a certain type of person you're hoping to connect with, like throw out the ideal connections you're looking for in the coming months here.
Yeah, I mean, for us, we want to build the platform. We are building the platform. In the past, we have built some of our own content on top of it, but we're really looking for partners that want to leverage this tool to help them accelerate their work.
Hmm.
So that would be companies that are making learning and development content, internal learning and development teams at large corporations. And then on the consumer side, we've started to have some really interesting conversations with agencies. So creative agencies
Yeah.
are working with their clients to figure out what does the M word mean to them, what does Web3 mean to them,
Hmm.
and uh, we're but they don't know how to build it, right? They need
Hmm.
help. They need help, and so we're there in their back pocket to really make the magic happen. So those are kind of the two big buckets of groups that we're interested in talking to in terms of channel partners for us.
Cool. Cool. Yeah. So if you're out there and you think you might be someone that could benefit from something like this, reach out to Amir. I'm sure his team would love to chat and learn more. The one thing I will say, whether it's the M word or the W3 word, or any other word that we want to call it, I love the two pillars that you're building on of storytelling and learning. I think the third one, unsolicited, you didn't ask for this, so, but I do firmly believe that we talked about some companies throughout this podcast, but the third pillar that metaverse and Web3 are trying to do and replicate, that the gaming world has done over and over again successfully. At least the games that have stood the test of time, they build community, right? And so it's about building a framework for people to be able to engage, participate, and feel like they belong to something, not just as an individual, but as a group. So I think like what I've heard from like your use cases, like people feel like they're in it together in a lot of ways. That's the magic of it all. So, you know,
100%.
storytelling, learning, community. It sounds like you've got something magical kind of brewing. So very excited to see where you guys take this moving forward. And you know, how can people reach you if they want to connect?
Yeah, my email address is Amir at AMIR at REM5, REM number 5, VR.com.
Cool. I will put that in the description so people can find it. And if anyone wanted to play with some of your stuff, is there anything out there that's available to mess around with?
We're gonna be launching some stuff publicly here in the near term. We've been, back to the concept of democratizing content creation. We've been having a lot of fun with artificial intelligence over the last 30 days.
Yeah, you're using OpenAI.
Yeah, yeah. So now imagine you go into a world and you just tell it what you want and it kicks it out the back end. We're
Yeah.
not that far away from that. So we're going to be launching some of that stuff publicly. But in the near term, send me an email and we're more than happy to send out demos because like any of this technology, it's all just a bunch of buzzwords and fluff until you actually try it for yourself.
Yeah, you gotta get your hands dirty, so to speak, and click around and break it and build in the sandbox. So, Amir, thanks again for your time. Very fascinating conversation. I look forward to seeing what happens in the next 5 to 10 years in this space, and you know, hopefully see simulacra in schools and corporations everywhere.
Thanks, Adam. Really appreciate the time.
Alrighty, sir. All right.